Hi, everybody. It's now Friday, January 29th. It's our last virtual day for a while. We made it to the end of another busy week, and I have been sharing with you some examples of fables this week. We've talked a little bit about what a fable is, and we know that a fable is usually a short story, usually has animals for characters. It usually happens outside, and at the end of the fable, there's some kind of lesson that is to be learned. And so today I have a story for you called The Princess and the Pea. And, a minute ago, I just said that usually the characters in fables are animals, but not all the time. And this is an example of a fable that does not have all animals for characters. So I found one that I think you might like. That was a good example that showed us that the characters didn't always have to be animals. So we'll listen as I read it and then think as I'm reading. See if you can kind of think about what you think the moral of the story might be. Once there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess. Only a real one would do. So the young Prince Fastidious traveled the world and knocked on many castle doors to find his princess. But everywhere he went, things went wrong. There were lots of princesses to be found, but there was something not quite right about them all. They either talked too much or not at all. They were either too old for him or too young. They were either spoiled rotten or they owned too many noisy little dogs. So Prince Fastidious came all the way back home with nothing but a cough and a cold for his troubles. One evening, a terrible storm blew up. There was much thunder, lots of lightning, and even more rain. It really was frightful. The king, who had gone to the kitchen to sneak a cupcake and some milk, heard a knock at the door. "Coming," he shouted. He opened the heavy wooden door and found a young woman standing there. What a sight the young woman was. Water streamed from her hair, down through her gown, into her shoes, and out at her heels. Yet she curtsied gracefully and said, "Your Majesty, I am Princess Rose of Royalton. May I come in?" "Why, yes, of course," replied the king. He left Princess Rose standing in the hall and ran to get his wife, the queen. "She says she's a princess," said the king. "We'll soon find out," replied the queen. The queen went downstairs to greet Princess Rose and give her some towels, a flannel nightgown, and a toothbrush. When the princess dried off and brushed her teeth, the queen had her sleepy servants strip the guest bed. Then she placed a little green pea on the bed frame. Next, the queen took 20 mattresses and piled them on top of the pea. After that, she took 20 goose feather quilts and piled them on top of the mattress. "Up you go, my dear," said the queen. "Good night." The next morning, the queen asked Princess Rose, "Did you sleep well?" "Oh," said the princess, "not at all. Heaven knows what's in that bed. I lay on something so hard that I'm black and blue all over. It was awful." Prince Fastidious dropped his toast for joy, and his parents smiled. They could see that Princess Rose was a real princess, for only a real princess was delicate enough to feel one pea all the way through 20 mattresses and 20 goose feather quilts. "Would you like an English muffin?" said Prince Fastidious to Princess Rose. "Why, yes, that would be lovely," she replied shyly. "Lovely indeed," agreed Prince Fastidious. The young couple fell in love by dinner time, where the first course was split pea soup. It was not long before Prince Fastidious married his princess. As for the pea, they put it in the museum. It's still there for all to see, unless somebody has taken it. There, that's a true story. Good night. And that is the end of our story, The Princess and the Pea. Now I want you to pause this video and see if you can think in your head about what you think the moral of this lesson might be. So this story is a little bit harder to figure out what the moral might be, but sometimes we tend to maybe make a decision, or we think about something, or we maybe make a judgment about somebody before we have all of the information or we have all of the facts. And that's kind of what happened in this story. The queen wanted to just assume that the girl was not a princess, and she jumped to that conclusion right away. She didn't have all of the facts put together before she made that assumption that she was not a princess. So when she finally had the facts gathered, that the girl could feel the pee under the mattresses, then the queen knew that the woman was telling the truth and that she was a true princess. So that's kind of the moral of this story, is maybe to don't make a judgment or a decision about someone or something without having all of the information. Hopefully that helped you kind of understand a little bit more about this fable, and we will be back next week with some other examples of fables, folk tales, fairy tales.